So when we lived in Shanghai, China, actually, we put a deposit down on NIO ES8 model, but they returned our deposit because at that time we didn't have a Chinese driver's license.
And I'm glad that our dream deferred to own our NIOs here in Dubai came out to right timing, perfect timing for that. So I'm here with my guest. He is a PhD scientist. He has lived and worked in China before, even before we ever came to Dubai, really. And he's also a NIO owner. So you've got two NIO owners today, and we're going to be talking to you all about our viewpoints on owning the NIO, and I guess from a scientific or a data standpoint, what we experience and what we think about how it collects data. Okay, so 3 questions that we're going to answer here today. The first question is about the experience of owning this car and what I guess we've learned over the past almost a month for me, and I guess 3 weeks for you, in terms of what we're learning about the car, what it's learning about us. And secondly, I think it's our viewpoint on NIO as a company, 89% down in terms of stock, and why we think that actually is the case. And then thirdly, I think overall it really is where our car is going in terms of technology and the tech that's in this car. So what were some of the things that you noticed when you first started driving this car?
So there are essentially 3 things that I want to share since starting to use this car. The first one was the acceleration. This car, despite its large mass and weight, it behaves as a sports car. The acceleration is quite high and it doesn't even feel like you're driving an SUV. The second thing is the soundproofing. This car, once you're inside and you're driving along the road, there is no sound that you can hear outside. Even the sound of its engine is almost silent. So increasing the speed or anything else, it's not followed by any sort of increased sound in terms of the engine power. And the very third thing is its adaptability according to the customer. So the Nomi personal assistants know exactly what I need, exactly what I want to do, and in addition to that, it's able to anticipate the things that I need, like a parking assist, and offer the support in real time.
Yeah, so I think that is the piece that you and I talk a lot about offline, is the things that this car does on a day-to-day basis that's surprising. Like, so you mentioned to me that you went to charge it the other day and it knew that you were going to charge it.
Yes, so the car has cameras all around, and once I stepped out of the car, I went to take a charger. I was simply standing behind the car on the charging side, and it simply opened the charging port for me on its own.
So, but why, I mean, like, okay, but why do you think that is? Because, do you think it's because it has learned certain behaviors, or is there like historical data that it's pulling so it can anticipate the fact that you're going to charge it?
Well, there was no regular interval of charging that I completed so far for the car, so I doubt that it actually uses any sort of data-based approach to decide. I believe that the camera simply recorded my position, and considering the fact that I had charger, or that I was near the charger in a way, it was able to pull out that piece of information and set the charging for me.
So that's another thing about like its adaptability, because I know when we first got it, I had to repeat myself a few times. Like I had to say her name and then say, hey, can you do this? Can you turn on the music? Can you do etc.? And I have a very American accent. You have a very Serbian accent. And when I'm in your car and I ask her to do something, sometimes I feel like she doesn't really understand me, but she understands you. Like even how Seni, our daughter Seni, she was like, that's not how you're supposed to talk to Nomi. You're supposed to say hi and then her name and then give her a certain command. And she has learned that there are certain like speech patterns to do with her. But I know now when I say, hey, so-and-so, turn on the music, she does, like very fast. I don't have to say it any kind of way, and I can just now say like, put the music on instead of turn on the music. And I can say just music, or I can give any variation of whatever it has to do with playing the music, and she understands that she's going to turn
obviously,
it on.
like any AI model simply learns from its user.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
But I think that's the piece that people really need to understand. In, we use Claude, we use ChatGPT, it's a little different because in that situation, every session, every chat session, it's kind of like you're starting anew. Now you can have a project and you can save skills, etc. But there's a lot more personalization, I find, that's happening with this car because it's not just language, it's also collecting your habits as data.
Yeah, well, certainly it knows location where you drive in the car because it saves in the map. It knows the time of the day when you drive in the car. Now there's a whole question of where is that data going and who's been using the data and so on, but undoubtedly there is a process of delivering the data to an AI model that's been employed in this car.
So what type of data do you think it's collecting, or have you sort of at least realized or identified as being collected?
Personally, I haven't identified any sort of data that's been collected, as all of these are not stored somewhere where I have access to simply.
Okay, you can't verify.
Can't verify the data that's being collected.
The cameras inside the cabin, I think a lot of people don't know about that. There is a way for you to take a photo inside the vehicle, and I've noticed when I'm driving that long drive from Dubai to Abu Dhabi that sometimes I'll get a notification that says, stay focused. So if I glance at my phone, the dashboard will ding ding, stay focused. She's watching. I say she because Nomi's obviously a woman. But yeah, she says, stay focused. There's also a drowsiness alert. I've only had that happen like twice, and I wasn't even drowsy. I think I don't know why, she just thought my eyes were closing. But in order for those things to function, there has to be some continual watching. It's actively listening and actively watching in some kind of way, which brings me to, I guess, a legal point in my mind, because you mentioned about verifying that data was being collected, in laws outside of the U.S. The U.S. is pretty immature when it comes to data privacy laws, but for sure for Europe, for UAE now, for China for sure, there's a lot of laws around data privacy, and this car is collecting a lot of data, and for sure it's not just disappearing into thin air, it's also going to be stored somewhere. And so, there's a huge question around if it's stored within the UAE or if it's stored within, servers in China. Now, I did read a report saying that the vehicle data is stored within UAE, but I also know that under Chinese data privacy law, for national security interests, if the Chinese government needs access to any data, Chinese companies are compelled to give it. So I think there's just a lot of question around who has access to the data, like with any product though. I mean, even with your cell phone, it's the same thing. How does that make you feel as a NIO owner?
It makes me feel totally fine. We just have nothing much to hide.
It's funny for me. I mean, like, exactly. I feel like, we love the ideal of privacy. Privacy, the ideal of it is great. But as technology is advancing, and even though I'm, a data privacy lawyer and doing all of this regulatory work, I really don't see a universe where we as humans are going to be able to cling on to 100% privacy. Even if you decide today to take your phone and throw it out the window, you go walk down the street, particularly in UAE, there's a lot of cameras everywhere. In China, there's cameras everywhere. In the U.S., there's I don't know where you can go on this planet and escape. So the second thing I wanted to talk about was about NIO's stock. And I know that a lot of people who tuning in here and watching this are investors, stock owners. I am a minor investor, a minor owner, probably compared to a lot of the viewers. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the company itself and why you think that might be at a place where it's 89% less than it was several years ago, and a lot of people have decided to, not be a bag holder anymore. What are your thoughts in terms of why it might be undervalued in some people's minds?
For me, as an owner of NIO, the most important thing is how this brand makes me feel. I personally like simplicity, and I like the fact that they are working on embedding the NIO outside of driving, outside of the cars, but more into daily life. What I mean by that, offering products, lifestyle thingies like NIO house in Abu Dhabi, and so on, where what they're trying to do is to provide some sort of lifestyle experience for their end users and to fully immerse the customers into their ecosystem.
You've worked in research and development and a few companies in labs that I won't say the names. What are some of the challenges that companies have when it comes to early research?
When it comes to NIO itself, as far as I'm concerned, this was the first car which utilized the AI usage as Nomi. Yeah, she heard me. All the way in, I learned about it in 2016, 2017, which is long before any agentic AI has kind of became.
Please reformulate.
Which.
Stop, Nomi.
Still didn't get you. Sorry.
Which is much earlier than any sort of agentic AI became accessible in a wider sense to the market.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people misunderstand the battery swapping. So I'm going to make another video about this later. But what I learned when I studied China's national goals in terms of energy infrastructure for EVs is that they plan to really have, and they do have so far with NIO, but even beyond that, to standardize batteries in EVs. So it doesn't matter if you have a NIO, a BYD, an XPeng, whatever, that you will be able to go to a battery swapping station and swap your battery. And a lot of people don't know that, but the battery swapping technology that they have created is part of a national plan, a national strategy for China. And I think, a lot of times it takes years to realize that in terms of research and development, billions of dollars get spent before people can get their money out. So, I'm not advocating either way. This is not financial advice. This is not legal advice. But I just know that, Amazon was around a long time before it really hit its stride. Would you still call this a car company?
What some people here in UAE don't know is simply they don't have the access to the Chinese market. This company has a much wider range of both sedans as well as SUVs available to the market in China. I would definitely call them a car company considering the number of cars that they produce. However, they do so with a different twist.
See, I would not call it a car company. I would call it a tech company. I think, and I was telling you about this analogy before, it's kind of like when iPhones first came out, you had flip phones, phones that are not smartphones, and people were like, oh, why would I need to email someone from my phone? Why would I need to text someone? It is different. This is the integration of a car and technology, and it's just not a plain car company, I would say. I would say there's a lot of things that we're probably going to see over the next 2 or 3 years that have to do with the AI that's in the car, the integration of all the data, etc.
They are in the tech space, by no doubt. However, whether they opt to do something else in the tech field and expand away from the cars by expanding into something else, I'm not quite sure.
Okay, so you got the standard range, I got the long range. What's one thing on your car that you wish you had that you don't?
Long range. That's the only thing that's different.
All right, guys, we hope you enjoyed our conversation. We talked a lot about data privacy issues, data collection issues, etc. But as two NIO owners, I think we're pretty satisfied with our decision. We will give you an update, maybe like 2-3 months from now, on how we feel. But for today, that's how we're viewing this. If you have any questions about the cars itself, the financing, etc., pop them in the comments below. We read all the comments. And until next time, take care.